will see later. Pops don't give a F about the people's judgment. Look, I'm doing what feels good to me. As long as it is respectful and I feel good about it at the end of the day and my children feel good about it at the end of the day, I really don't give two shiz about what y'all think. And I respect Pops for that. Oh, my life, be waiting for you. Look how you do. If I don't say it, then y'all won't do it. Please remember to like, share, subscribe. Tip your favorite narrator on Cash App at $NAROB on YouTube. And if you are not already a part of this book club, please hit the Patreon link below and or the join button here on the YouTube. And for a small monthly fee of $5, you babies, yes, you can be privy to all the shenanigans before the YouTube gets it, if the YouTube gets it. Now, let's continue talking about Miss Mavis Staples. The singer had arrived in New York in January 1961 and released his debut album a year later. Largely made up of cover songs, it sold only a few thousand copies. But in 1962, he began performing the newly written song, Blowing in the Wind, which soon was adopted as a protest anthem by the emerging folk movement. Dylan acknowledged that Blowing in the Wind was adapted from the Negro spiritual No More Auction Block, and his songwriting bore the imprint of gospel in originals such as Ain't Gonna Grieve and Paths of Victory. His keen interest in the music brought him to the Gospel Music Festival on September 7th through 9th, 1962, at Downing Stadium on Randall's Island in New York. He accompanied Robert Shelton, who was covering the events for the New York Times and would become the singer's first biographer. Dylan was taken aback by the ostentatious arrival of Mahalia Jackson in limousine, her gown lifted by aides. He was drawn to the more unassuming and approachable demeanor of artists like the Staples. Shelton introduced Dylan to Pops and his children, who were impressed that the young folk prodigy was on such intimate terms with their music. We were just shocked. This little white boy, and he was little, knew our stuff, Mavis recalls. And then we'd hear him sing, and Pops would say, wait a minute, y'all listen to what the kid is saying. The Staples patriarch was struck that a young white man from the North had so accurately reflected how Pops felt as a Southern black man. The opening lines of Blowing in the Wind, how many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man, took him back to his days growing up in Mississippi when he was sometimes made to feel like something less. The Staples family and Dylan crossed paths frequently in the next few years. The Staples taped a Westinghouse TV special in New York with Dylan and several other folk acts, including the Brothers Four, Carolyn Hester, and Barbara Dane. Okay, so the dogs are in my lap. Forgive the heavy breathing. You know they Frenchies, so you know they have trouble breathing. It be snores and all kinds of stuff. Okay, but pick that up and put that over there. So I'm seeing the transition from gospel to R&B or soul music. It seems that they were able to cross over using the folk bridge, which expanded their audience also. You know, Pop had always said throughout this book so far that he did not want to limit his family to just gospel. Okay, because remember, originally pop started out with the blues. It just so happens that he was able to nurture and perfect the sound through gospel, and then pick up that gospel and then take it over here with folk, which expanded his audience to the movement. And that's how Dr. Martin Luther King came in also, because you got the gospel and then you have folk, and it's all a part of the movement. It just got different faces on it. And then eventually R&B, rhythm and blues. And you'll see later, pops don't give a F about the people's judgment. Look, I'm doing what feels good to me. As long as it is respectful and I feel good about it at the end of the day, and my children feel good about it at the end of the day, I really don't give two shiz about what y'all think. And I respect pops for that. Them church folks, baby, they so godly, but they are so judgmental. Folk music meant almost nothing to the African American inhabitants of the northern ghettos and southern farms, but the music movement did ignite a hunger for authenticity and substance among young white listeners who became increasingly conversant with the blues and soul. The folk and civil rights movement symbolically merged on August 28, 1963, when folk artists, including Dylan, Joan Baez, Odetta and Peter, Paul and Mary, appeared at Martin Luther King's historic Human Rights March on Washington. Pops defined the group's expanding repertoire of folk songs in a 1964 interview with the American Folk Music Occasional as good material, and jumped off into a long, passionate explanation of the meaning behind "This Land Is Your Land." I think it's time for the whole nation to start listening to something that means something. This is everybody's land. This is not just my land. This is our land. This land belongs to everybody. If they would think like that, we'd have a better United States. It's really rough what the colored entertainers have to go through sometimes in their travels. He recounted incidents where he and Reverend C.L. Franklin were insulted by a gas station attendant on a gospel tour in Yazoo City, Mississippi. Stopping at a food counter, the proprietor ordered them to enter through the back entrance. A disgusted Pop said everyone left without eating. You'd be hungry too, but you don't feel like eating after they tell you something like that. That's why the colored people sing the blues. That's why they sing with soul. Newport Folk Festival founder George Wein and his wife Joyce became lifelong friends of the Staples family. A mixed-race couple back then that blew our minds, Mavis says. They were music people, and it didn't matter whether you were black or white, folk or gospel. They were welcoming. During the festival, Mavis happened to share a car with Dylan and Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash and Bobby were big fans of each other, and that night, John gave Bob a guitar, Mavis said. Johnny would tell these amazing stories about how he was so drunk one night he got out of the car and started staring at a cow in a field because he thought it was Hank Williams. We were all laughing. Bob was begging Johnny to stop. He was laughing so hard. Okay, Johnny, no more, no more. Dylan also was thoroughly charmed by Mavis and publicly proposed marriage. Robert Shelton reminisced in the mid-'80s. Oh, those great old days when Bob got an instant crush on gospel singer Mavis Staples. Pause. Does Bob Dylan have any white children? Any? I heard back in the day, it's snoring for no reason. I swear I thought I heard back in the day that Bob Dylan wanted some of that Mavis Staples. I mean, she is beautiful. She's probably taller than him for real, but that ain't never stopped Bob Dylan from wanting to grab a piece of chocolate out the store and take it home. You know what's funny? When I hear Mavis Staples reflect back on her relationship with Bob Dylan, she says that it's one of her biggest regrets. She should have got with that white man. Speaking of little white men, not that this is a little white man, but he is a little man. Y'all told me in the comments that Mavis Staples did go solo for a while. And she was actually signed to Prince's label. And I'm like, oh, yikes. You know Prince don't mess with nothing that he can't touch. Blink, if you know what I'm saying. Like, hi, can I speak to Mavis Staples? This is her. Who is this? This is Prince. Prince? Yeah, Prince. Yeah, so I was working on something. I need you to come to Paisley Park so we can work on it. Okay, in more ways than one. And what's her name? Missy Elliott are the same person. Missy Elliott ain't writing nothing, creating nothing, producing nothing if she can't touch it. Dang, Shaka Khan. I know you gave him the hunchy poo. You know, but remember when Shaka Khan was like, oh, I only slept with like 2 men. Girl, stop it. The most widely circulated story is that Dylan approached Mavis about marriage at Newport. But Mavis says the proposal came earlier that year at the Westinghouse TV taping in New York. He told Daddy in front of everybody, she says. We were waiting to get food at the cafeteria, and we were in front of the line. Next thing, I hear this voice from the back. Pops, I want to marry Mavis. Out walks Bobby, and everybody's laughing. Pop says loud enough for everyone to hear, don't tell me, tell Mavis. So again, church folks, we do zodiacs over here. Okay? Let me tell you why Libra and Cancer are so special. Libra, we are dreamers. We can be dreamers. We can live in our own fantasy world. In our minds, we are superstars within our own world. And we expect for you to treat us as such because, baby, we're going to treat you as such. Okay? That you are special and that you are all things that sparkle. And when you have a creative person like Bob Dylan, that can sometimes have self-doubt, the Libra, and you have a Cancer that can be your biggest fan. They can always pull you out the dirt. You hear me? Like I tell y'all, when a Libra is broken, a Cancer will fix it. From that day, Bobby and we started talking. The Newport Folk Festival was our first kiss. I'll tell you that. I haven't told anybody that. We sat out on the stump outside the hotel room and just talked. He and Purvis would talk for hours and drink wine at Newport. They were extremely tight. The next day, we're at a pool. Bobby was so happy that he took a start onto the diving board and jumped. All of a sudden, he was yelling, Purvis, you got to come in. Purvis was at first reluctant to do his friend's bidding. I'm looking at him. He dove in there wearing his boots. I said, man, I ain't coming in. You crazy. But he wouldn't quit yelling, so finally I jumped in. And he tells me, Purvis, you gotta help me. I lost my trunks. He was so skinny, they slipped off when he hit the water. During the weekend, an exhausted Dylan fell asleep in the room shared by Mavis and Yvonne. We were friends. I was talkative and Dylan wasn't at all, Yvonne recalls. I would tell him, you're shy. You gotta talk and tell Mavis how you feel. And they got together. The marriage proposal. It was no joke. Later, he'd still come through me to get to Mavis when she was married. But I tell him, Bobby, it's time out for that now. Mavis says she still has pangs of regret about turning down Dylan. 6-7 years we would write each other and call and see each other occasionally. It got serious. It was boyfriend-girlfriend stuff. We loved each other and still do. But in 1969, I stopped the relationship. She was well aware of Dylan's other girlfriends, including Baez. Judy Collins believed that Mavis was skeptical about Dylan's proposal from the start. Dylan didn't look like the marrying kind to me, and Mavis knew he was having her on, Collins said. Mavis eventually married a prominent Chicago mortician, Spencer Leak, in 1964. Their marriage lasted 8 mostly difficult years. Dylan remains one of her greatest advocates. It was also in my mind that I couldn't marry a white guy, Mavis says. I was so young and stupid. All I had to do is look around. We had plenty of white people marching with us. Dr. King loved that. So why would it be a problem marrying Bob Dylan? To this day, I could kick myself because we were really in love. It was my first love, and it was the one I lost. Now that's sweet. That's sweet. Pop Staples had first heard Martin Luther King speak on the radio in the 1950s and was moved by what he heard. A few years later, he would finally meet the man who was leading the march towards racial equality, a concept that once seemed absurdly out of reach when Pops was growing up on Dockery Farms in Mississippi. Pops called King to arrange a meeting in 1963 and was delighted to receive an invitation from the minister to attend an 11 a.m. service at the Dexter Avenue Church in Montgomery, where King was pastor.
No, how you